Hi everyone. Today we are going to be making some sourdough discard lemon loaves, and we're going to make up some pizza melts using our sourdough or bread our pepperoni sourdough we made the other day. And then we're going to prep a focaccia for tonight's dinner and feed our starters so that they can make some more bread because we're running low. So let's start out with our sourdough lemon loaf. We're going to do mini lemon loaves instead of one big one because a big one takes a long time to cook. But we're going to start out with 1 cup of melted butter. And I am using salted butter because I think the extra salt in baked goods taste really good. And we're going to add in 1 cup of sugar. So 1 cup of granulated sugar into our melted butter. And let's get our sourdough discard. We're going to discard it because we've got to feed it up so we can make some sourdough tonight. Prep the dough up. I'm going to give it a nice little stir, and we are going to use a 1/2 cup of sourdough discard. Here we go. You just use my little spatula here to scrape it out. And then I'm going to put this over here because we're going to use this for our focaccia in a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to take my spoon right now. I've got a spatula, and I'm going to start kind of creaming our discard, our sugar, and our butter together. And then we're going to add in our eggs for our lemon loaves. They're kind of like, kind of like a pound cake. So they're really rich and delicious. And we'll make a lovely lemon glaze with them. And then while we bake up, we'll make some pizza melts and prep our focaccia for tonight. Okay. Just there we go. Now we're going to add in 3 eggs. So the eggs are the main rising unit for our loaves today. They'll have just a little bit of baking powder in it, but mainly it's going to be the eggs. So they're going to be a denser, richer loaf, kind of like a pound cake. So I've got 3 eggs in here. Now I'm going to just pop the yolks, and I'm going to make sure these get really mixed well into my sugar, butter, and sourdough mixture sourdough starter mixture, because once we add the flour in, we really want to minimize the amount of mixing because we want our loaf to be kind of fluffy versus stiff. Okay, so I'm going to really make sure we've got these creamed together. And you could use a handheld mixer if you wanted, but I find a spatula does just fine. That way you can make less dishes. Okay. Now we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of sour cream. Go grab a spoon. And I'm just going to eyeball a 1/2 cup. So that's about 1/4 cup. And just a little bit more. That's about a 1/2 cup of sour cream. This is going to help keep it really nice and moist in our recipe. Just get all of that off, and then I'm going to mix that in well. And then we're going to add in our lemon juice and lemon zest. So we're going to mix it in. Try to get all of the curds of the sour cream kind of broken up. Because again, when we go to the flour part, we don't want to over mix it. There. Just going to smush it around. I do have my oven preheated to 375 degrees. That way we'll be popping them into a nice warm oven. Okay, now is the time. We're going to use zest from 1 lemon and juice from 1 lemon. That's about 2 tablespoons of lemon zest and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. You want to zest your lemon first before you juice it, because once you've juiced it, your lemon's like soft, and a firm lemon is much easier to zest. And this is where we're going to get that lovely lemon flavor from. I love to use just regular lemon juice and lemon zest versus an extract. I find lemon extract is very, very strong and has more of an artificial flavor to it. So fresh lemon juice and nice, the zest. The zest is where you're going to get a lot of your lemon flavor. So let's get almost done, but it's about 1 whole lemon. And I will say, this is a Parmesan grater. It's a cheese grater. It works. I find I use it more for zesting fruit than I do for cheese because it works so well. And it makes sure it makes the zest like the perfect size. I have some zesters that are just really big. And so you get more like curls of the rind. And I like my zest to be finer, so you don't notice the texture as much in your baking. Okay, this should be fairly well. You can see all of our zest sitting on the top of our batter here. We'll mix that in, but first we're going to cut open our lemon and add the fresh juice to it. So before you juice it, you want to kind of pull out any of the seeds that you can see. Sometimes you get lucky and you have hardly any seeds, and other times you hit the jackpot. I once juiced a lemon and it had, I think I counted up 27 seeds in it. It was crazy. There was one seed we missed, so I'm just going to pull that one out. And now we're going to juice our other half. Again, we want about 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice, which is about a whole lemon. So the zest of a whole lemon and the juice of it. Okay. Now we are going to give this a nice stir.
You have a question? Are you going to cut the pineapple up on live?
I can cut up on a pineapple. I might do it for dinner tonight. That way it'll be ready for my kids, because I was planning to cut up a pineapple today, but I think I'm going to do it for tonight's stream, because when I cut it up, my kids all like to eat it right away, fresh. And so we'll have it with our dinner tonight, since 3 of my kids are at school today. And my other 2, my little ones, are down for nap, and they already had their lunch. They had leftovers from our dinner last night. Okay. Let's see. We've got it. I'm just going to fish this one lemon seed out. There we go. And now we're going to add in a teaspoon of baking powder. So it's really going to be just the eggs that rises, a little help from the baking powder, but not much. And then we're going to add in a half a teaspoon of salt. If you were using unsalted butter, then you'd probably want to use closer to a teaspoon of salt. There we go. We're going to give this a nice mix in first, and then we will add in our flour. Okay. And we're going to use 1 1/4 cup of flour. So I'm going to scoop it up, and I'm using just all-purpose flour. I'm not using cake flour or anything like that. Make sure there's no pockets in my cup. So we've got 1 1/4 cup of flour for our lemon loaf. And we're going to mix this in. And you want to make sure you don't over mix it. You want to kind of have it just lightly mix, a little bit of a clump to it. That will lead to a nice, really fluffy lemon loaf. Okay. And your batter is going to be a bit thicker than if you were to use an oil. The butter kind of congeals a little bit quicker. And so you have a much thicker thing, but it leads to a much better tasting like finished product, baked good. Okay, so here we've got our nice kind of thick, chunky batter, which is what you want. That's going to leave you a nice, soft, kind of fluffy pound cake. Okay, and now we're doing ours in our lemon loaf pans, our mini loaves. So we've got 8 mini loaves here. You're going to want to make sure you grease your loaf pan well, since you can't put a liner unless you have a liner. But you want to make sure you get them well so that they come out easy. So this is the key, because otherwise, if you don't have it well mixed in there, then they can get stuck, and that's just no fun. You don't want to ruin your little loaves. And we're just going to come through here, and I'm just going to fill up each of our little mini loaves here with our batter. And they'll be ready to pop this in the oven. I'm going to try to want to make them all even as possible. So I'm going to go through with a big scoop on each one, and then I'll even them out. Yeah, the key is you don't want to have any overfilled or some underfilled to the other ones, because you want them all to bake up at the same time. And if you have them uneven, then you're going to have some that are underdone and overdone. There. And I'm filling mine all the way up. This recipe makes 8 mini loaves, or it can make one big loaf if you want to. But again, a big loaf will take much longer to bake, and I find they dry out faster than little loaves. So I like the little loaf. Okay. We're almost got it all scooped up in here. Try to even up some of these. Okay, bowl's empty now. And then we're just going to give it a nice little shake. This kind of helps it all even out. And now let me get a paper towel real quick and clean up my loaf pan just a little bit. The reason why you want to clean up your loaf pan is because this will just bake on it, and that just makes it harder for cleanup. When it's still wet right now, you can just wipe it off, and it saves you time from scraping and trying to clean your loaf pan up. There we go. Okay, let's go pop these in the oven. We're going to put these in the oven at 375 for about 20 minutes, and then we'll check on them. Hopefully they'll be done by then. But if you were to bake a full loaf, that takes almost an hour. And so that's why I like the mini loaves, because you can have your little treat much sooner. So we've got those going. I've got my timer set. So why don't we're going to start prepping. What should we do? Let's prep our sourdough focaccia, because we have to do some stretch and folds. So we can do that first, and then we'll start on that. Then we've got to make our lemon glaze. So let me get my ingredients over here. So it's a sourdough discard focaccia, but it's not a true, it's going to have just a little bit of help from some yeast, just a half a teaspoon. So it's not going to be a full-on yeast bread, nor is it a full-on sourdough. Let's see. Got it all. Okay. We're going to start out with 1 cup of warm water. So I had my water warmed up and ready to go. And we're going to put in a half a teaspoon of yeast, active dry yeast, just a little bit. You don't need much to help this, but it gives you just the nice little extra pillowy, cushiony puff to your sourdough, your focaccia.
You have a question. If you don't have discard, do you need to use more yeast?
So if you didn't have discard, yes, you would have to change your recipe. You'd have to do a yeast-based focaccia, which would be not only changing your discard, it would be changing your flour, your water, and your yeast. So you'd probably need closer to 2.5 teaspoons of yeast, and then more flour. So it is, you have to use a little bit of different ones, but I've been doing a lot of like sourdough discard stuff, but I should show you guys a couple of the traditional like yeast stuff. It works as well. I do find that sourdough tends to leave a much nicer, tender bread that is more moist than like a yeast. Yeast sometimes can get dry, especially if you don't take the time to really knead it. We're gonna put in a 1/2 tablespoon of sugar over the top of this. This is just gonna help that yeast get a little bloom on it and active again. The yeast is not really doing the rising here, it's helping, but the sourdough discard is going to be the primary rising agent in here. So we have that set there, and now we need to measure out 1 cup of sourdough discard. So this one is a heavy use of sourdough discard. Okay, so I'm using from both of my containers because we're gonna feed them up here. So I want to make sure I have enough in here. And this is why I have 2 containers of starter always going, because sometimes I feed just one and the other ones are going, but I use a lot of recipes that use a large amount of discard. And so my one little jar doesn't just cut it. So I've got my big one. Okay, we've got our yeast in here. We're going to add in our sourdough. This is 1 cup. So we can get as much of this out. I don't want to use my spatula because I'm going to be using that when we feed it. So I want to keep it nice and clean. We're going to give this a nice little mix. We want it to dissolve all the way together, or dilute or mix up together. That way it goes in evenly into our flour. And then we are going to add in, let's do our salt first and then our flour. We're going to add in about 1 teaspoon of salt. Got a good mix. And then 3 cups of flour. And you don't have to use bread flour on this. Focaccia is more of a crumblier bread, so you don't have to use bread flour on it. And any recipe I have that I don't have to use bread flour on, I typically then just use all-purpose because it's cheaper. And I always have more all-purpose on me than I do bread flour. Okay, so we need 3 cups. Just making sure there's no pockets in my cup. And then I'm just going to use my dough whisk here. And we're just going to mix it up together until we have kind of a nice little shaggy dough form. And then, okay. So you can see we have kind of a dry shag, which is what we want. And then what we're going to do is we're going to let the dough sit here for about a few minutes while we prep that, and then we're going to come and knead it. But we're going to let it sit in this dry shag so that the flour can hydrate. Okay. We're going to let it sit there. Let's start prepping our grilled cheeses. So the other day we baked up our loaves, and this is a pepperoni loaf. So you can see the pepperoni. It's a pepperoni sourdough loaf. It was delicious. And I said, we need to make pizza melts with it. So here we are. And I was like, no, you guys can't eat it. We got to save it for our pizza melts. But we have to prep up our loaf because we have just a teeny bit of our other loaf left. Kind of cut this wonky. Let's cut out. Here we go. So we've got this one, and I think these two are about the same size. Yes. I find with the sourdough, the bowls, which are the round loaves, you have to cut them kind of funny in order to get 2 equal slices for your like making sandwiches. You have to kind of cut them in half and then cut the ends going out. which then always leaves you with 2 heels. Okay. Save this. Got just a little bit left over. Now we're going to take some room temperature butter and we're going to spread it on each side. Where did my butter paddle go? Can't spread butter without my paddle. And we're going to just spread a little bit of room temperature butter on each side. There we go. I think it got used last night. I made naan with dinner and I was using this paddle to spread it. And then my mom came over. She had Sunday dinner with us, my mom and my stepdad. And she was so excited when she saw the hot cross buns because she absolutely loves hot cross buns. And we have no more hot cross buns. Our whole dozen is gone. But she was the one who always, every Easter, we went to the bakery, we got the hot cross buns. She's not a baker. I don't remember her ever making me cookies growing up. So I was like, she was so excited because she doesn't go out shopping more. I do all their shopping for them. And so I am pretty sure she probably had that for breakfast and for lunch because she, like me, loves her bread. Okay, I'm going to just turn my skillet down to low. We're going to put a little bit of marinara sauce. You don't want to do too much. You can save some marinara sauce for dipping, but you want a little bit on here between the bread and the cheese. But if you put too much, your bread will get soggy. So you want really just about a teaspoon that you can then spread over the whole length of your bread. But again, don't put too much because you don't want your bread to get soggy from it. And then I like to save the rest for when we dip it into our sandwiches into it. Here we go. And we're going to be using some nice mozzarella. You could use fresh mozzarella if you have it. But this is like a nice thick cut from Tillamook. I love their cheeses. And we're going to just make our first kind of layer on here. You don't want your cheese to overflow. So it's going to get it like a pizza melt. You got the, marinara, mozzarella, and then I have some sandwich cut pepperoni that we're going to add on here. Okay. Get this side. And just a little bit. So you don't need much. And then we're going to put a nice layer of pepperoni on. So, and I don't go too thick on it because, again, you want your cheeses and everything to melt up. So if you go too thick on, you won't be able to, cook melt the cheese down nicely. But I will give my husband loves pepperoni, so he'll get a nice layer. I am not a huge pepperoni fan, so I'm going to do a little bit more bougie. We're going to use a little bit of fresh basil. So we're going to fill up, got all of our fresh basil right here. And then I have some sun-dried tomatoes. So mine will be, but then I have the pepperoni in the bread, so it's like the perfect amount. So we've got our mozzarella, basil, tomatoes, pepperoni over here. And now we're just going to put our second layer of cheese on. Hey, Teddy. Hey, what you doing? Yeah, do you want to join me? Yeah, you're not sure? Okay. Yeah, are you all done with nap? Okay, and now we're going to put our second layer of bread. Yeah, you found the shoes on here. Do you want to help me? We're making kneading some stuff. Do you want to help me knead some dough? You want to help me knead dough? All right, you can look at your book if you want to. Okay, so now our dough is nice and hydrated. So we're going to go through here. And you see how it's much more, like it's softer now? We're going to knead it together. And this is going to be really important for developing the gluten in our dough so that it's nice and soft. Now with a focaccia, you definitely have a bit more of a chewy bread. You cook it out on a baking sheet in a long rectangle with a bit of oil. So it has a nice kind of chewy crunch to it, but you do want that soft, pillowy inside, for the thicker middle parts of it. You don't want it to be too stiff. So we're going to give a nice knead here. Oh, yeah. I'm going to turn my skillet now up to about a 6. And steal any of this extra dough crumb in here. You mind? Do you want to help me knead? Yeah, do you want to go get your stand and help Mama? There we go. But we're going to just knead our dough here. There we go. You want to make sure you really push down in it and stretching it. And I will say, we're going to knead this for about 2 to 3 minutes for the first part. And then with like our other sourdoughs, you want to do the stretch and folds. So every 15 minutes for about the next hour and a half, you're going to do your stretch and folds. Hey, you want to come help me? We're going to make some, we're going to feed our sourdough and then we're going to make some glaze. Okay, I'm going to have you go over on this side, okay, for Mama. Okay, so we used up our sourdough starter, and you can see we've just got a little bit left in each jar. So we need to feed it so we can make some homemade bread tonight. Okay, Teddy, are you going to help count with me?
Yeah.
We're going to put 10 tablespoons in each one. 1. Yeah. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. You can hold right there. 8. 9. And 10. So we got 10 scoops in there. Let me check on our melt real quick, and then we'll do 10 scoops in the other one. We've got our butter melted and our bread starting to toast up and get nice and warm. We like to do multiple flips on it so that we get everything melted and cooked all the way through. So we got 10 in here. You ready to help me? Yeah, you're going to help stir. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you're going to stir it up for me?
Yeah.
4, 3, 4. No. That's fine. He can stir it like that. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we're going to give it our water, and we're going to mix them up. Okay, you can keep stirring. I'm going to get the water for it, bud. Okay, since we used 10, we need 150 milliliters of water to go in each one. Are you ready? We're going to put in there.
Yeah.
And then we're going to put some in here, okay? And you stir it up. Now, the point is you have to feed your starter before you can use it to make bread, because if it's not active, your bread won't rise. And so it's really important, I always like to do it a couple hours before I make it so that it is nice and bubbly. That's when you know that your starter is active. Good job. Yeah, you're going to stir it around. Good, Jay. Got it? Let me pull this in. Now, you stir that up for Mama. You mix it. Mix your potion. Let's see how our grilled cheeses are going. Okay. Now we've got the butter melted on both sides. Now we're going to do the kind of the toasting up for the nice crunch. You keep mixing. Once you get that one, that's a good job for you. We're going to make our glaze for our lemon loaves. So yeah, we had lemon loaves baking in there. So we have our sourdough lemon loaves baking in the oven. I'm going to zest a little bit of a lemon in here. We're going to do this first. Then we're going to add our powdered sugar, and then we're going to cut it open and add some fresh lemon juice. So you want to zest again. You don't need a full 2 tablespoons. I just like to do a light zest, maybe about a teaspoon of zest all the way. You see just a little bit. Then we're going to add in a cup of powdered sugar. And this is going to be the glaze for our lemon loaves. So we've got a whole cup here. Yay. Let me get a spoon. Keep stirring. You're doing a great job, buddy, stirring it up. Let's check on our melts here. Yeah, they still need a little bit. Good job. It is heavy. Good. You stir it up, mix it, and then you're ready to mix that one. Okay, so now we're going to add in our fresh lemon juice. So I'm going to take some of these seeds out because we don't want seeds in our lemon glaze. And then we're going to squeeze. Yeah, I grabbed some seeds, but there's still more seeds in there. This is a seedy lemon. So let's pick out our lemon seeds as we see them. You could always like juice yours over a strainer, but again, I'm not one to make extra mess. So we're going to start with this first batch, mix it up a little bit, and then we're going to add in our second bit of juice. Yeah, good job stirring. Yeah, are you mixing it up? Yeah. Nice thing with starters is, or your sourdough starting, they're really forgiving. If you add a little bit too much water, too much flour, it doesn't make much of a difference. In there, you can just correct it the other way. You know, you're supposed to feed them right before you make anything that you need the nice kind of bubbly rise to it. Okay, here we go. We're getting our nice glaze mixed in. So you can see that lemon zest in there, and that we use the whole juice of 1 lemon. Yeah. Okay, you ready to do that one? Okay, we're mixing it up. Now we got to mix this guy up. We got to be a little bit more careful with this one because he's kind of high. So you just I like to use these long spatulas because the spatulas help kind of reach down at the bottom. I know some people will use a butter knife or a chopsticks if they have them. Perfect. Nice golden crust. We are almost done with our melt. Okay, let's stir these up. Good job, buddy. There you go. Mommy. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So we've got them in here. I'm going to show this. So you don't have to stir them until they're completely smooth, but you can already see the bubbles forming on here. That shows you how active. Yeah, do you see the bubbles? Yeah. That shows you how active that starter is. And then let's get a paper towel since they got a little bit dirty, dude. We're going to wipe off our jars, the outside of them. But remember the inside, the starter is made from fermented flour, which is full of like really great bacteria. That is what would cause the fermentation process. So we just like to keep the outside clean and minimize what's going in. We're going to put our cheesecloth over, and then our lemon loaves are done. They're beeping. Yeah. Okay, you want to come help me with the oven? Yeah, come help me with the oven. You want to look in there? Tell me what you see. I'm going to put the light on for you. What do you see cooking? Let's grab our things. Okay, buddy, stand back over there. It's going to be hot when I open. So here we have our nice lemon loaves. I'm going to give her things. They've got a nice firm top, which is what we want. Beautiful. See how they cooked up nicely? If we were to do a full loaf pan, it would have to bake for a long time. And then I find that they turn out like they dry out on the ends. So here is our lovely lemon loaf. I know, aren't they nice? We're going to give them a second, and then we're going to put them out on a plate, and we can drizzle them with some glaze. Okay, let me get a nice little butter knife. We'll see how these slide out sometimes. Okay, let me get a nice little butter knife. We'll see how these slide out sometimes. I think our grilled cheeses are lovely. So let's turn these off. We're going to set them to the side. Do you have my juicer? Yeah, you being my helper? Okay. So we want to kind of go with a butter knife right along. And then you're just going to kind of slide them in. And you see how they come out perfectly? That is because we greased it well. You want to make sure you have them well greased. Otherwise, they'll stick to the bottom. And this prevents you from having to cut out parchment paper or whatnot. I do like to get mine out fairly quickly because sometimes once they cool down, the pan cools down, it can stick to the sides. And you don't want that. But they have a nice, lovely, lemony smell to them. Get them out. They're not too crazy hot to touch. I mean, they're hot, so I wouldn't hold them for a long time. But it's not hard to, fold them out. There we go. And we need one more plate. We'll do a little plate for us to have as our dessert. Okay. Now, we're going to glaze one up. You want them to cool just a little bit before you do your initial glaze because, yeah, you have that, because it will run off. But we'll do our one on this one because we're going to eat this one up. And you're just going to want to drizzle your lemony, zesty glaze over our sourdough discard lemon loaf. And it will add an extra pop of really brightness and lemony to it, even though we used a lot of lemon zest in our loaf. And so here we have the rest of them. We're going to let them cool off just a bit because if you glaze them too early, it all runs off. But our sandwiches are done. So let's pull these guys off. And I can show you our delicious pizza melt that we made. That's a lemon seed. Here we go. Nice, beautiful golden crust. So we have our delicious pizza melts made on our homemade sourdough bread that had a mozzarella and pepperoni inclusion in it. And then we put some marinara, pepperoni, and cheese. Mine's a little bit bougie with some sun-dried tomatoes and basil. Well, guys, we have done a lot today. We made our dough for our focaccia tonight. We made our lemon loaves and our things. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're cooking for our family. And hopefully you guys learned something along the way. Again, all of our videos get uploaded on the link on our page, so you can always check back if you want to remake the recipes. Thanks again.